organization that I think we'd all agree is one of the success stories of the last decade, certainly of the last 5 years, of countering violent extremism is Hedayah in the United Arab Emirates, and a really good example, I think, of a multilateral partnership between some different countries and some of the different stakeholders in the Global Counterterrorism Forum. And that's why I'm excited to be able to introduce His Excellency Maksud Kruze, who is going to be speaking a little bit about his center's work, which, as I said, is really world-leading. So please.
Thank you very much, John. It's a great honor to be here with you in Riga, in Latvia. And I have to say, this is my first ever visit to this beautiful country, so I thank you for making this a possibility. I also need to thank the NATO Center of Excellence on Strategic Communications for hosting this dialogue and for making this an exceptional event and very important one. But before I begin my, like I said, like I read in some of the tweet feeds, death by presentation and PowerPoint, I have a confession to make to everyone. I do have a serious problem with the issue of counter-narrative, counter-messaging, counter-ideology, counter-anything, because it always puts you on the defense. You're always responding to an initiation by someone else. When I usually dream, and I dream a lot, of the ideal world of counter-narrative, how we deal with these extremist groups, the way I always see it, that we need to basically formulate the message. We set the stage. We decide on the tone, and then let them counter our messaging. Let them be on the defense side, not the other way around. We all have seen the usual scenario, a clip that's being produced and then broadcasted, and then officials would say, well, we want to review the authenticity of this clip. 5 years later, well, it is authentic, indeed. Of course, the effect, the damage has been done. And that's exactly where we need to move forward in a different direction. Hence, trying to talk about alternative messaging, alternative narrative, where we present what is it that we want really from these people. And to be very frank with you, if I look in the eyes of any violent extremist, if I ask them this direct question, ask them, I don't want you to be a violent extremist. Their immediate response would be, so what do you want me to be? What is the alternative? At the moment, they have a sense of identity. They have a sense of purpose. They belong to a greater ideal, a greater idea, where they feel they're making difference to the world that they're seeing, to the perceived injustices, perceived grievances. Therefore, what we need to present to them is what is it that we want from them and how we can help them to move forward in this direction. We at Hedayah, the International Center of Excellence for Countering Violent Extremism, were able to tackle this dimension, this angle, by presenting different approaches, somewhat innovative, somewhat different, where we basically try to say, this is maybe the way we need to move forward. And I'm happy to share with you some of these examples as well. But just to begin with a bit of brief on our work on counter-narrative, counter-messaging, which basically is one of our main 6 themes and pillars for the next 3 years of our own strategic plan. We started basically back in December 2012, where Hedayah officially started, and this was the beginning where we were able to work on how we can support victims of terrorism and hearing their voices, using their narrative to communicate effectively. If someone would see a mother who lost her child, a mother of a victim and a mother of a perpetrator, and both of them were kept in the dark when the incident happened, what kind of difference, what kind of effect would that actually have? But then we moved more dramatically back in December 2014 when we hosted the first ever expo on countering violent extremism communications. Basically, we asked ourselves, what kind of alternative that we want? Now that we see the rise of Daesh online messaging, which is really unbelievable and unprecedented, how can we counter their online messaging? One of the main initiatives that we had is basically what we call CVE Hackathon. And hackathon is a bizarre word that has 2 combinations, Hacking and Marathon, where we bring experts of communication, CVE, practitioners, and also researchers working together to generate certain solution-based, solution-driven approaches to how best deal with the messages of these groups. At the same time, looking at the whole concept of messaging and communication, what type of ideas we can generate, what kind of thoughts we can deliver in this regard. We started conducting series of capacity building workshops and training related to the role of communications, social media, in terms of how we can develop this alternative messages, what kind of approaches we can take, and what it means for us in the long run. And more recently, in 2016, we were able to go a little bit one step further in the direction where we developed the first ever catalog counter-narrative that helps you take certain steps on how to build your counter-violent extremism, basically looking at the narratives in Southeast Asia and provide you with a guide that will help you to move forward with this, and how far we can go in terms of not just basically analyzing the material that is available online, but actually mapping your own messaging, designing your own messaging, and then implementing in the right direction. Also, we've been working on multiple projects related to journalism and how you can deal with that from a CVE perspective, but also amplifying the voices of the female defectors, as well as mapping the experiences of the different perpetrators, whether male, female. And it's worth noting that we at Hedayah, we focus on all forms of extremism, whether right-wing white supremacy, left-wing anarchy, or even the usual suspects that we deal with. All forms of extremism, we believe, begins as an idea. And it's this idea that triggers a certain emotional response which leads to the act, the behavior of violent extremism. To give you a bit of our activities overview, you will see that the focus on our communications and counter-narrative, although it's one of 6 themes, it actually occupies 17% of most of our activities, whether it's research, capacity building, or dialogue initiatives. At the same time, we develop online resources, which I all invite you to basically join and participate and take advantage of, which is our own virtual counter-narrative library, in which we basically assembled a collection from around the world, from the different innovations, different ideas, different approaches, and looking at examples, case studies, how you can actually deal with this. Whether you're looking for a clip that you want to watch, or basically specific tweet feeds or campaigns that you want to build, or simple analyses and research-based type of material, all of this is available at your disposal. At the same time, we understand that we need to look at a diversification of the different approaches to countering narrative and be able to provide you with all the different material that we produce at Hedayah, especially the Southeast Asia collection, the guides that we've developed, in order for you to be able to look at it. At the same time, we try to produce some of these guides in multiple languages, local languages of the different parts of Southeast Asia, and also be able to allow it to be accessible to both the practitioners on the ground, in the field, but also the policymakers, those who need to strategize and need to plan ahead. At the same time, when we look at the recent activity of the mapping experience of formers, basically, we asked ourselves a very simple question. If I would meet with a former violent extremist, there are 2 central questions that I need to ask to understand the processes, the underpinnings, why someone becomes violent extremist. The first question, how did you become violent extremist in the first place? What led you into that? What kind of narrative? What kind of messaging? And then the second question, how did you snap out of it? What made you wake up one day and realize that this was a mistake, and basically you need to move on with your life and maybe join us in countering these messages? And going through these processes allowed us to basically look at this and understand and learn. And this is basically one of our latest publications, which is available online, which you can access and basically use and learn from, but also help us to expand on our own existing knowledge and understanding. Related to that as well is we wanted to amplify the voice of female defectors. You'll notice at Hedayah, one of our projects that we constantly work on since the last 2-3 years is highlighting the role of women in particular when it comes to countering violent extremism. We've noticed throughout 2016 and the different incidences that took place in Europe that there's always a female perpetrator involved in this, either basically committing the act of terrorism or harvesting or inspiring. Therefore, how to be able to lead on this and what kind of difference we can make in this regard, that is also part of the different campaigns, the different work, and the different initiatives in this regard. At the same time, we looked at journalism, the day-to-day news feed. What relevance does it have in this whole process of countering communication? Who actually is working on it, what it actually means. These are some of the events that we're going to do during this year, which is an open invitation, and please do follow us and be able to contribute to that. And also there is one recent event that we'll be doing very soon in Marrakesh, where also focuses on the issue of counter-narrative and how to build the capacity, the momentum, and the different models and thinking in this regard. One of our few publications that I put here, which you can access fully on our website, related on the different aspects of the examples I provided. Whether we're talking about the guide on how to build your own counter-narrative, or basically how to expand your own research that is evidence-based, provide the knowledge in which you can build your own narrative, or basically looking at the role of females and how women can actually play a role, but an extended role also of families, and basically how we can all be part of the solution. In addition to our publications, we have multiple resources. As many of you are aware, Hedayah was the first inspired initiative by the Global Counterterrorism Forum, which is a multilateral organization with 29 countries plus the EU, and 12 of them are members of our steering board. Basically, we work very closely with the GCTF in developing certain good practices, but also moving forward with providing certain policy-level guidelines, which will help you in your strategic planning and understanding as well. With that, I would like to conclude by a very simple thought. I have my very beautiful daughter, my little princess Ilyazia. When I'm negotiating with her at night, she needs to go sleep, but she wants to watch the TV. Basically, what you have to do, not telling her, well, you should actually not stay late, you should not be doing this. In fact, and as we've learned from psychology, and we're in the presence of wonderful psychologists, and I'm one of them personally, guilty as charged, you basically ask her, ask your children, what is it that you want them to do? Basically reinforcing the behavior that you want from them. So back to my initial question earlier this presentation, it's not about that we don't want these violent extremists to continue to be violent extremists, but basically what is it that we want from them? And I hope that we all together can find the answer for this question. Thank you very much.